Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello, sister. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Okay, so the khutbah today was about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being with those who are broken. So I'm going to reiterate just a little bit what the khutbah was about, and then we'll pick up from where we left off in the khutbah. So we talked about the human ability for, or human capacity for resilience, meaning the ability to bounce back from situations that can sometimes be traumatizing, situations that could sometimes be, could set you back in your life. And your ability to overcome, that feeling of being defeated and to get back on your feet and to face your challenges head on. That's what it means to be resilient. And that we are wired as human beings for that. I mean, look at all the stuff that we've been through. Individually, collectively. I mean, look at all the stuff that we've been through, man. Each individual from amongst us has a story to tell of some traumatizing events that we've gone through in our lives. And, as a saying that I'll end with is that surviving past wounds is a clear indication of your ability or your capacity for resilience. Being broken is not a sign that you are of no value. Being broken is a sign that your value is immeasurable, that people can't put a value or measure on how much value is in you. Look at all of the stuff that we've been through. Without going any further, we understand what I'm talking about. So one of the things that I led with was that one of Allah's names is Al-Jabbar. Al-Jabbar, which I mentioned in a line of poetry by Ibn al-Qayyim, which has a number of meanings. It could be translated as the irresistible, the compeller, the one who forces, his servants to do as he pleases. Allah gives us free will, but then there are certain situations where Allah directs our actions and our behavior to go in a certain way, right? Sometimes you want to do things your way, and then you fall flat on your face and you realize that you should have did Allah's way from the beginning. And sometimes Allah has his way of making us come to that realization. All of us have hit a brick wall in our lives and realized that we should have just went the opposite way from the very beginning. We say, very arrogantly, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to do it my way. And then you fall flat on your face, and then you realize that you should have just did it God's way from the very beginning. That's what Allah means by him being a jabbar, him compelling his servants to do things his way. It doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes from us the ability of free will. That we have free will. We have the ability to choose. But sometimes our choosing gets us into trouble. All right? So Allah, out of his mercy, directs us in a way, a special way, in a divine way, directs us back to doing things the way that he wants us to do it. And then Jabbar has another meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fixes those who are broken. When we break ourselves, as human beings, we have a ton of limitations. We have a ton of weaknesses that many of us are not aware of. Many of us, the smart person from amongst us realizes that no matter what your resources are, you're still weak and you still have limitations. The smarter you are, the weaker you realize you are. The more, I don't want to say ignorant you are, but the less intelligent you are, the more arrogant, right? This is called the audacity of arrogance, right? The more arrogant you are, the more ignorant you are, the more audacious you become, right? And you can look at that in terms of young and old. When you're young, you're very bold, you're very audacious, and you do things that you wouldn't normally do when you're 45, 50 years old. You wouldn't do the same things that you did when you were 17. Because at 17, you were ignorant, so you were audacious. And at 45, 50, you're a little wiser, so you're a little more cautious in what you do, right? And that caution, make no mistake about it, caution is a sign of fear. right? You're not going to go, doing certain things. So understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He fixes us, when we break ourselves. And we have a number of ways that, we contribute. When I say broken, I mean defeated. Defeated by circumstances, defeated by people, defeated by situations, that we put ourselves into, and, we're constantly breaking ourselves. And the first thing that I mentioned that breaks the human being is divorce. And of course, women, suffer a little bit more from divorces than men do. And a person can say, well, how could you say that? And I would say that because when women go into any type of relationship, there is a degree of emotion that is attached to that. Men, we're not necessarily emotional beings. So we can go into relationship where people can be completely business oriented. It could be, agenda based or oriented. Doesn't necessarily have to be emotional, which is why men sometimes can be very emotionally detached in their relationships. They're still married. When a woman is emotionally detached, she's gone. There is no having a relationship with a woman who's emotionally detached. When she's emotionally detached, she's going to end up cheating on you, or she's going to end up leaving you because there's no emotional connection. A man doesn't have to be emotionally connected and will still stay in a situation because we're looking at other, benefits of the situation. Financial benefits, she's not really a burden. I can keep the woman. It's not a big deal. I'm not attracted to her. I'm not emotionally connected to her. But nonetheless, it's cheaper to keep her. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? Like, we don't have to, it is not a necessity for us to be emotionally connected to someone to remain in a relationship with them. Whereas for women, an emotional connection is absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. So when we talk about divorce, right? When we're talking about going through divorce, it's painful. It's a painful situation. It's a painful process from beginning to end. And the more emotionally attached you are to the person, the more painful it's going to become separating yourself. And the Prophet ﷺ alluded to divorce as being something that breaks a woman. He said, خُلِقَتِ الْمَرْأَ مِنْ ضِلْعٍ, that a woman was created from a rib. And even in Christian, in Christian faith, they used the rib as a metaphor for the woman as well. So we have that, we have that reference in Islam as well. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that a woman was created, the first woman, obviously, was created from the rib. خُلِقَتِ الْمَرْأَ مِنْ ضِلْعٍ, that a woman was created from the rib. He said, وَإِنَّ أَعْوَجَ شَيْءٍ فِي الضِّلْعٍ أَعْلَاهَا, and the most curved part of the rib is the top part. And this is in reference to the woman's tongue, that her tongue is very sharp. A woman can, completely dismantle you as a man just by using her tongue. And she can build you up by using her tongue as well. He said, and إِذَا اسْتَمْتَعْتَ بِهَا اسْتَمْتَعْتَ بِهَا وَبِهَا عِوَجٍ, that if you're going to draw any benefit from your woman, from your wife, then you're going to do so while she has this curve in her. That's the only way you're going to draw benefit from her. He said, وَإِنْ ذَهَبْتَ تُقِيمَهَا كَسَرْتَهَا, and if you go and try to straighten her, you're going to break her. You look at the reference. He said, if you go and try to straighten her, you're going to break her. He said, وَكَسْرُهَا طَلَاقُهَا, and breaking the woman is divorcing her. It's broken. All right? Broken. So the Prophet ﷺ used divorce as a metaphor for breaking a woman. This is one of the ways that a woman is broken. And men, we're broken too when we go through divorces. But as men, we're not emotionally broken. We feel defeated in that we feel like failures when we go through a divorce as a man, because we're constantly judging ourselves as men based upon how we manage ourselves in situations. We define ourselves as men based upon how we manage ourselves in a situation. For example, if you see a man and, his woman is kind of, he's more like a cuckold. A cuckold is someone who just kind of lets his woman run all over him, right? And we will look at a man like that and say, man, you need to manage your life a little better. You need to manage your marriage a little better, man. Like, we'll look at you as less than a man because you are not managing your marriage or your situation in a way that we perceive that a man should. There should be some level of control, some level of authority in certain areas. That doesn't mean that the man is is this dictator over his marriage, but a woman should usually has some level of respect for a man when he conducts himself a certain way. And when we see a man who's allowing his woman to run all over top of him, then we would kind of consider that person as less than a man. That's just usually how it goes. All right? In the world of men, all right? In the world of men. Obviously, we're moving into a different phase of this gender neutrality time, where there's no gender and gender lines, and this whole idea of patriarchy and matriarchy is no longer a factor. These are old traditional roles and values that have no place in this, modern society that we're moving into. I'm not from that generation. I grew up in a different generation, so I can only use what I know as a reference. All right, this new generation of gender neutrality and, men don't have to identify as men and women don't have to identify as women. And there's no such thing as men's roles and women's roles. That's foreign to me. That's foreign to me. And I didn't read the playbook on that, nor do I care to. So I'm sorry, I can't really use that as a reference. All right. Nonetheless, divorce is painful for men in that we feel like failures. We feel like failures when we go through a divorce, whether it was our fault or it was the other person's fault. It really doesn't matter, because when we stand in front of another man and someone says, hey, you still married? And then you're like, nah, not married. That situation didn't work out. In the back of your mind as a man, you walk away feeling like the person is judging you. The person is judging your whole aura as a man, because the situation didn't work out. So yeah, as men, we feel like, and especially if you've been through multiple divorces, you kind of feel like, all right, man, I'm going to give this marriage thing one more shot, one more try, because there's a feeling of defeat. And that is what I mean when I say broken, that you're broken. You feel like you just want to give up because, the situation has become very overwhelming for you. All right, and then I mentioned the situation of Khawla bint Tha'laba when she went to the Prophet ﷺ to complain about what her husband did to her. All right, and then I mentioned that the second thing that kind of breaks us, and I said in addition to that, if the divorce has some level of oppression involved with it, if the person is not only just divorced but also is being oppressed on top of that. You have some men who, the woman asked for a divorce. Maybe she's no longer attracted to you. Maybe she was no longer emotionally available with you. And then on top of all of that, she takes the children. And then on top of taking the children, she goes to file for child support. And then on top of filing for child support, you don't even get a chance to see your children. You know what I mean? Like, you think about all of that. So first of all, she wanted a divorce. She wanted out of the situation. Second of all, she kept the kids. She kept the kids with her. Third, she went and filed for, child support. So you're paying astronomical amounts of money. And then on top of all of that, she doesn't even let you see your children. I mean, I can't think of a more oppressive situation than that. You won't you're taking money out of my check on a bi-weekly basis. And then on top of that, I can't even see my children. I can't think of a situation that is more oppressive. All right, so when we talk about, and this is, important because when we talk about power dynamics, women would like to believe that men, the power in the relationship lies in the hands of the man. But this society has flipped that around, has changed that. The power dynamics, make no mistake about it, is in the hands of the woman. Make no mistake about it. Power dynamics is in the hands of the woman. Most of the time, her income is greater than the income of her husband. Most of the time, if she wants out of the relationship, there's nothing the man can do to salvage it. She's gone. She wants out. Most of the time, when she separates, she's keeping the kids. There's no discussion about that. The kids stay with me. And then she decides, once she keeps the kids and move on, whether or not you even get to see your children. And then, of course, the courts are on the side because child support is just a new way in this system of the new Jim Crow, is just a new way of keeping, especially African Americans, keeping them in the place where they need to be. All right? White supremacy has now found another way to keep African American men in their place by using their women and the whole child support system. All right? To keep you exactly where you need to be. All right? So, I mean, nonetheless, there's a feeling of hurt and defeat on both sides, whether men or women. Then I mentioned that another thing that breaks us is sin. Sin is a thing that, creates defeat within us. We feel like, I'm just going to give up and just, toss this whole idea of establishing a relationship with God, establishing a relationship with a higher power. I'm just going to throw this whole idea out the window because I keep sinning, I keep falling into these mistakes, and I just can't seem to get it right. We say, I'm struggling with my deen, I'm struggling with my religion, and I just can't seem to get it right. I'm defeated, I'm broken. Sometimes we commit a sin that we feel like there is no coming back from. Right? We go so far in some of our transgressions, we feel like there's no coming back from it. And repentance, as I mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that the process of repentance is very painful. It's a very painful process to give up a sin that you've been so used to committing, that has become so easy for you to do, and now you come to the realization that you need to give up this sin. Sometimes, sinning leads us into places of disparity. We fall into despair where we believe that, we've gone so far in our transgressions that God is never going to forgive us, and we might as well just keep going. All right? That despair is, a self-inflicted wound. A self-inflicted wound. Wounds that we do to ourselves by telling ourselves that God is not going to forgive us. It's a self-inflicting wound. And Shaitan plays with that. He plays with that whole idea that God is never going to forgive you. You did it now. There's no coming back from this. You might as well just keep going and never look back. All right? And, going back to repair that relationship with God, that's a painful process. You have many Muslim children now that are out in the world who just like zombies, just gone. When you see them, you're like, come to the masjid. Well, I'm going through something right now. And, you know what it is. You know exactly what it is. You are living a life of sin that you believe that these sins have overwhelmed you to a point of disparity, that you believe that there is no coming back from that. And you know that in order to, get back right with God, that is a process. That's not simply, you stopping or you just saying, oh, God, forgive me. There's a process that is attached to that, starting with recognizing that you are living a life of sin. Recognizing as, moving forward starts when you believe that you can't stay where you are. All right? Moving forward. In life, no matter in what capacity, moving forward starts when you realize that you cannot stay where you are. So that means that wherever you are in your sinful lifestyle, you have to begin to, in order for you to move forward, you have to realize you can't stay there. You cannot stay at this place. All right, so then now that starts the mentality process. There's a physical part, there's a spiritual part, and then there's the mental part of all of that whole entire process. It's mental, physical, and spiritual. All right? So you start with the mental process, you start to say to yourself, okay, maybe I can get right with Allah. Maybe I can get right with God. And then you start the physical process to now begin to separate yourself from the sin and from all of Shaitan's trickery. All right? Shaitan has a way of getting you so invested in a life of sin, right? It's the sin itself. Pay attention to how Shaitan works. It's the sin itself, the actual sin that you're doing. All right, then it's all of the things that led you to the sin. It's like a plant in a seed. And as that tree begins to sprout, there's roots. And in order for you to stop the sin, it's like you got to pull the tree up and all the roots that is attached to it come up with it. So when you start to separate yourself from the sin, you start to uproot everything that has connected you to that sin. So if it's a woman, if it's drugs, if it's, you name it, gambling, you name it, whatever, drinking, whatever it is, that is your, that is your vice. You got to think not just about the sin itself or the vice itself, but all of the things that got you connected and intertwined with that thing. All right. So let me use an example. An example, something that we take lightly today. A girlfriend, a boyfriend. Let's just say that, you engaged in a relationship with somebody you had no business. 9 times out of 10, you were introduced to that person by somebody else. This was shaitan. You didn't even know it. Hey, guess who asked about you the other day? Oh, really? Word? She asked about me? Okay. You don't even know that shaitan is setting you up. You don't even know. It could be a sibling. It could be a friend. You know what I mean? Like, hey, guess who asked about you the other day? And you're like, who? Oh, such and such. Who is that? You don't even remember the person. And then shaitan, here you go. Oh, you remember her from high school. You remember her from that job we used to work at. You remember her from this masjid we used to attend. Yeah, she was asking about you the other day. How's she asking about you? Where did she see you? Oh, she saw you on Facebook. Or she saw you on Instagram. The whole thing has already been set up for you. And then you're like, yo, you got the number? You got a number? Hey, I got a number right here. Pass you the number. That was shaitan setting you up. So, or give her my number. I'll take her number. One of you call, and then automatically it's like this instant connection to somebody you haven't seen or heard from in years. How do you just instantly connect with somebody you haven't seen or heard from in years? There's no such thing as an instant connect. Shaitan had your number, had you clocked from the very beginning. And because we are so detached from our religion and the negative energies that are around us, we don't spot it from the door. We don't say, let me take a step back, look at this again, and see shaitan's handiwork all in this situation. And as people of dhikr, people of constant reminder of God, our day as Muslims from beginning to end is surrounded and saturated with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you have that element, you can spot, like your senses become so acute. They become so precise. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Ittaqu farasat al-mu'min." Fear the foresight of the believer. Believer, someone who truly believes in God and has that type of relationship with the higher power, you can see things before they unfold. Because you are aware of energies around you. You are aware of shaitan's trickery. You see it play out right in front of you. But that only happens when you are awoke, when you're conscious of, your surroundings. When you're just walking, living life day to day and just thinking the people that you run into are people, not realizing that devil takes on human form, not realizing that demonic energy is all around you at work, the people you're around. So, when we talk about the process of repentance, it starts with the thought of, separating yourself from the sin. It starts you detaching yourself from all of the integral parts of the sin that led you to the sin. And then it becomes now the process of changing your lifestyle, because you realize that sin is not just a simple act of disobedience. Sin is a lifestyle. Because in order for you to get engrossed in sin, you got to be able to accept it as being okay. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it. You suffer from, cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is that internal war between your values and what you're doing that goes against your values. And a Muslim who stands firm on principle, stands firm on their values, you can't just sin and enjoy it. You don't enjoy sin. When you commit the sin, you're in the moment. You enjoy it for that moment, but the moment you're done with it, you feel bad. It's eating away at you. And the only way you can get rid of that dissonance is that you have to do something that makes it okay for you to do it. Right? You have to do something that makes it okay for you to do it. Otherwise, you won't be able to enjoy it. You understand? This is really simple. It's really deep, man. Nonetheless, this is the process of Tawbah, and maybe we can do a separate lecture just on that alone, but there's a physical act, there's the spiritual act, and then there's the mental component to all of that. And we mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more happy with the servant when he repents than a person who is in the desert and loses their things in the desert, and then after much toiling, after much being tired and falling in a state of despair, finds it, and then becomes very ecstatic, very happy. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more happy with you when you repent than this person is when they lose their things and find it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of the pain that is associated with separating yourself from sin. All right, so that was number 2. Number 3, another element from the things that break us are the tests that Allah gives us in life. Sometimes Allah tests us with things and we feel like we're defeated, and everything is a test. Everything is a test. All right, even blessings are tests. Right? Prophet Shuaib said, "Hada min fadli Rabbi liyabluwani ashkur am akfur." This blessing is from the bounty of my Lord to test me to see if I'm going to be grateful or ungrateful. So even blessings are a test. All right? Everything is a test. It's a test of your gratitude or your ingratitude. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, tests us in a number of ways. As the saying goes, that you don't know how great you are until you're tested. Allah has to test us. A person will say, well, why would God test us? Because in order to sharpen us in this human experience that we're having, we have to have challenges. We have to have challenges. What doesn't challenge you is not going to change you. Right? In order for us to get better, Allah has to challenge us. And so the challenges that Allah gives us is not designed to break us. It's not designed to break us. Evidenced by the fact that Allah does not give us more, all right? Evidenced by the fact that Allah doesn't give us more than what we can handle. Allah does not test us to break us. He tests us to sharpen us, all right? To make us better. And He doesn't test us with things that break us, evidenced by the fact that He doesn't give us more than we can handle. Allah says in the Quran, "La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa ma ataha. وَسَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ عُسْرِ يُسْرًا." Allah says in a verse in the Quran that Allah does not burden a soul. لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا. Allah does not burden a soul إِلَّا مَا آتَاهَا, except with what He has given it the ability or the capacity to bear. وَسَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ عُسْرِ يُسْرًا. And Allah will make after difficulty ease. But there has to be some difficulty first before you can enjoy the ease. Because if you got ease without difficulty, you wouldn't value it. If you got ease without difficulty, you wouldn't value it. So Allah gives us a little bit of difficulty, and then after that difficulty, some ease. So we value the ease as well as the struggle that we went through to get the ease. You follow me? It's so profound, man. All right. However, these tests sometimes have the propensity to make us feel broken, to make us feel defeated, to a point where we require the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to continue. These tests are designed to enhance our trust in Allah, our reliance on Him, our patience, our closeness to Him, our dependence on Him, which are all qualities that we could not get anywhere else. Where else would you learn patience? Anyone that has ever learned patience has learned it through a rigorous set of challenges that came to him or her in their life. You can't go in a store and buy a box of patience or a bottle of patience. And the beauty about the challenges that Allah gives us, the beauty of it is that once the challenge is over, once the difficulty has subsided, you get to keep the patience. It's yours. You earned it. You earned it. After the situation is over with, that required you to be patient, after the situation has subsided, you get to keep the patience. It's yours. You earned it. And you get to share that patience with others, and you get to enhance that patience and sharpen it as other situations arise in your life. That's just the way that it goes. All right? But we couldn't get these qualities: trust in God, trust in Allah, dependence, reliance, closeness on Him, patience. We couldn't have gotten any of these things except through the patience that Allah gives us. Not only that, by developing these qualities, we earn the ma'iyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ma'iyah means that Allah is with you. You earn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's closeness. All right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is close with those who have been broken. In the narration that I mentioned, Musa, Prophet Moses, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rabbi, ayna abghika? Oh my Lord, where do I find you? Where do I find you? And Allah replied by saying, Ya Musa, ibghini inda mukasarati qulubihim min ajli. O Moses, O Musa, you will find me or search for me with everyone whose heart has been broken, who has been crushed and defeated by their circumstances. You'll find me with them. You'll find me with them. Which is why, as I said before, the prophets and messengers, their trial was to champion the cause of the underdog and the marginalized and the despised and the society's throwaways. The valor of their mission was tested by who they were going to invest in. You're going to invest in those who have nothing, or you're going to go after the elite, the elite of society. Their valor is tested through the disenfranchised or the marginalized population, always. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُم مُّصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَّبِّهِمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we will surely test you. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. We will surely test you. بِشَيْءٍ with something, not all of it, with something of fear, khawfi, wal-ju'i, hunger, وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ, and a decrease in your wealth, wal-anfus, and family members and relatives, wal-thamarat, and produce, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, and give glad tidings to those that are patient. Those who, when they are afflicted with a calamity, they say, to Allah we belong, and to Allah we shall return. These upon them are the prayers of Allah, or upon them is the mercy of Allah and His compassion, and these are the people who are rightly guided. We live in a time of extreme physical and psychological and some psychological disorders in the times that we're living in now. The average American, they say statistically, 46% of Americans, if tested, they would test positive for at least one mental health disorder. 46% of Americans, and I'm sure that number, this is per a 2013 Pew statistics. I'm sure today in 2018, it is higher than that. Higher than that by leaps and bounds. At least half of the population of Americans, if tested for at least, they would test positive for at least one mental health disorder. We suffer from anxiety. We suffer from extreme fear, schizophrenia. We suffer from so much distress, high levels of stress that has contributed to our obesity, that has contributed to, other, failing, parts of our human body. Things are not working properly, not necessarily because we're sick from anything outside. Most of it is internal. And some of this stuff we inherited genetically from our parents. All right? Mental health disorders can be genetically passed down. The DNA reads it, and it's passed down from child to child, from generation to generation. And sometimes mental health issues are thrusted upon us due to the extremely unhealthy, sick, and sacrilegious environments that we live in and are raised in. Some of us grow up in ghettos and environments, man, where, we're raised in projects. We're raised in these small little apartments, in this 20 of us living in an apartment, cousins and uncles, and and in the midst of all of that, you have to factor in that, a crowded apartment or house, and then factor in all of that, the molestation, the physical abuse, parents who believed that beating their children was the solution to everything, children being molested and abused by uncles and cousins and grandfathers and fathers, and it's just ridiculous. This is what we are going through. And then we come out of these homes, we throw a blanket on all of that by going to college, getting a degree and graduating and going into these jobs, and we come out appearing that we got it all together. But we are suffering as a people, suffering. And in Muslims, it's even worse. Why? Because as Muslims, what we do is we use Islam to cover our issues. We use Quran and Sunnah to hide behind our mental health issues. So when we see a brother and he doesn't give you greeting of salam, and he's always talking about Quran and Sunnah and holding fast to the rope of Allah, and it's just this very extreme approach to being religious, we often assume we hold up the flag to this person, believing that, mashallah, this person is on it. This person is really on his or her religion. When in fact, the person suffers from mental health issues beyond what you can imagine, and they've used the religion to cover those mental health issues because it's not normal. The behavior is not normal. I can give you the whole layout. I can give you the whole resume of abnormal behavior in the Islamic community, whereby the person is using the religion to overshadow the mental health, the underlying mental health issues that are there. Wallah al-Azim, I kid you not. I kid you not. And we're using religion, we're using Islam to cover over that thing. Nonetheless, man, we are living in a time of extreme physical and psychological disorders, sometimes inherited genetically from our parents, and that others thrusted upon us because of the extremely unhealthy and sick and sacrilegious environments that we are raised in. All of which have contributed to some degree of fear, insecurity, lack of confidence, brokenness, feelings of being defeated, that we experience at one time or another. Am I lying? Am I making this up? Or is there just an inkling of truth to what I'm saying here? No, I mean, like, real talk, man. Like, we're suffering, man. But those who are aware know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who are broken. If you're listening right now and you feel defeated, you feel broken because of your society, your environment, all of the things that are going on in your personal life, you feel defeated, then you have to know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who are broken. I'm going to end with this last hadith. I want you guys to pay close attention to this. You know how sometimes sometimes people use art to try to convey truth? Right? In every art form, there's some conveyance of truth, right? Rappers do it. They try to convey certain tidbits of information to the public in their rap songs. They try to convey, there's some truth. You got to read in between the lines. You got to understand that person's story, and you got to understand what they're trying to say. Artists, people who draw art, and a lot of the pictures and the portraits that these artists paint, they're trying to say something. They're trying to convey some type of truth. This is what people who are artsy, this is what artists do. People who are writers, all right? Prolific writers, people who know how to write and articulate. And although they may write something that is fiction, or something that is, just a made-up fable or story, in a lot of these stories, there are lessons, concepts that the person is trying to get out to you. Because sometimes you can't just spell it out for people. You can't just spell it out, because sometimes people they're not emotionally or psychologically equipped to, decode what you're saying. So sometimes you got to package it in a way where people can actually sit back and receive it from where they are in a way where they can understand it, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, "Khatib an-nas bima yafhamun." Speak to people in a language that they understand. You understand? You have to be able to communicate to people and articulate truth to people in a way that they can grasp and receive it and let it resonate with them. And that doesn't always mean spelling it out in words for the person. So when you look at the Prophet ﷺ's method of conveying his truth, conveying the truth of Islam, conveying the truth of, the human being's relationship, unyielding necessity of the human being's relationship with God, you'll find that he used a number of methods and techniques to convey that. So listen to this hadith al-Qudsi, authentic hadith al-Qudsi, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يقول الله جل وعلا يوم القيامة, that Allah will say on the day of judgment, Ya ibn Adam, Ya ibn Adam, just give me 1 second. I need to block somebody. Okay. All right. They blocked. At least one of them anyway. All right. So the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to one of his servants on the day of judgment, Ya ibn Adam istat'amtuka falam tut'imni. That Allah will say to his servant or one of his servants on the day of judgment, O child of Adam, istat'amtuka falam tut'imni. I sought food from you, but you didn't feed me. I sought food from you, but you didn't feed me. And the servant will say, Ya Rabbi, kayfa ut'imuka wa anta rabbul alameen. Oh my Lord, how can I feed you when you're the Lord of everything that exists? Listen to the conversation. Allah says to his servant, I sought food from you, but you didn't feed me. And then the servant will retort with, oh my Lord, how was I supposed to feed you when you're the Lord of the worlds? And Allah will say, istat'amaka abdi fulan falam tut'imhu. He said, one of my servants sought food from you and you didn't feed him. He said, فَلَمْ تُطْعِمْهُ أَمَّا لَوْ أَطْعَمْتُهُ لَوَجَدْتُ ذَلِكَ عِنْدِي. He said, but if you had fed him, you would have found your reward with me. Notice how Allah connected that to him. He said, I requested food from you, but you didn't feed me. He said, how am I going to feed you when you're the Lord of everything that exists? He said, my servant asked you for food and you refused to feed him. If you had fed him, you would have found your reward with me. That adds to my point again, that our relationship with one another is just an extension of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Follow me. Continuing on. He said, Ya ibn Adam. He said, Istasqaytuka falam tasqini. He said, I asked you for drink, but you didn't give me anything to drink. He said, Ya Rabbi, kayfa asqiyaka wa anta rabbul alameen. He said, oh my Lord, you are the Lord of the worlds. How am I going to give you anything to drink? He said, Istasqaka abdi falam tasqiyahu. Falaw asqaytahu. Walau asqaytahu. He said, my servant such and such asked you for drink and you gave him nothing to drink. If you had gave him something to drink, you would have found your reward with me. He said, you would have found your reward with me. Then the last sentence, this is the point of reference here. He said, Ya ibn Adam, maridtu falam tu'udni. He said, O child of Adam, I was sick and you didn't visit me. I was sick and you didn't visit me. And the servant will say, Ya Rabbi, kayfa a'uduka wa anta rabbul alameen. How will I visit you and you are the Lord of everything that exists? Allah will say to him, Amma inna abdi fulan marida falam ta'udhu walau udtahu. He said, my servant such and such was sick and you didn't go visit him. If you would have visited him, you would have found me with him. What does he mean by this? Sicknesses, whether physical, mental, psychological, sicknesses is a type of defeat. When you're sick, you feel defeated. When you're sick, you feel broken. You're vulnerable. Any situation that creates vulnerability, that breaks you down to your lowest place. Anytime there's a situation that breaks you down, that makes you feel defeated, that makes you feel vulnerable, that makes you feel broken. He said that my servant was sick, and if you had visited him, you would have found me with him. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who are broken. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who are broken. Very important for us to understand this. He said that my servant asked you for food, my servant asked you for drink, and you didn't drink, you didn't give them anything to drink, you didn't feed them. If you had fed them or gave them something to drink, you would have found your reward with me. He said, but my servant was sick, and you didn't go visit him. Rather, if you would have visited him, you would have found me with him. As going back to the statement of Allah to Musa, that Musa said, oh Allah, where can I find you? And Allah said, oh Musa, you will always find me with those who have been broken, with those who have been defeated, with those who have been broken. Subhanallah. And so sickness here, as we can deduct or we can deduce from this hadith, that sicknesses are an element to breaking a person down and making the person feel defeated, making the person feel vulnerable, making the person feel like they don't have, what it takes to continue on. And for those of our brothers and sisters here that are suffering, from whether it is diabetes, whether it is cancer, whether it is, it doesn't matter what the circumstances is or was, whatever you are suffering from, then know that you have a privilege. Know that you have a privilege. There was a movie that came out. I'm going to segue into modern day references. All right. There was a movie that came out, I think last year. It was called Split. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie. This movie was about a person who suffered from multiple personality disorder. All right. Multiple personality disorder. 1 minute the person was an aggressive individual. The next minute the person was someone who suffers from OCD, a germaphobe, cleaning off everything. And sometimes the personalities overlapped one another. So the person was one personality, but characteristics from another personality begin to emerge while he was in a different type of personality. Very interesting story. All right, so towards the end of the movie, he kidnaps 3 girls. 2 of the girls he kills. He didn't kidnap them necessarily to kill them, but there was a personality that was trying to overtake all of the other personalities. Nonetheless, he killed 2 of the girls. The 3rd girl, as he was going to kill her, and this particular girl, they flash back to other portions of her life. She was molested by her uncle as a little girl, 6, 7 years old. Her father and her uncle was out, teaching her how to shoot a gun, how to hunt. And while the father is going off somewhere else, the uncle rapes the girl. All right. The father dies. This is the kicker. The father dies, and she has to go live with the uncle. She goes to live with the uncle, the same uncle that was molesting her, right, and raping her. And this is an 8, 9-year-old girl, right? So now she's living with this animal, right? And so as it stands, going through that traumatic time in her life, as some people have to find ways of what's called disassociating. You disassociate, meaning you detach yourself from your immediate environment because it's just so painful. It's so painful and traumatizing that you do what is called, what psychologists call disassociation. And you become detached psychologically from your situation because it's so overwhelming. And this might be a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you might see a person that they're in a particular space at a particular time physically, but mentally they're somewhere else. They have completely detached from where they are. And some human beings have this element. They use this detachment from their environment because it is so traumatic. It is traumatic. And make no mistake about it, young people, especially African, I can't speak for any other experience. Young African Americans growing up in homes that are traumatic, traumatizing, wallah al-azim, they have elements of disassociation. However that disassociation plays out, sometimes we create, fake environments, fake worlds within a world, right? In that particular movie, the guy, he had a window that was drawn on a piece of paper and that he stuck it to a wall. That was his own imaginary window that was actually open because there was a wall in his room there was no window there. So he disassociated and he created this fake imaginary world where there was a window there and the window was open. Nonetheless, towards the end of the movie, he's chasing the girl. And as he's chasing the girl, she locks herself inside of a gate. And he's on the other side of the gate. And he's trying to pull the bars open to get to her. And as he looks at her, part of her shirt had fallen off. And she had on basically like a tank top underneath. And he could see the scars on her from where she used to scar herself and hurt herself. You have some children, when they are traumatized in situations, they begin to cut themselves on different parts of their body, right? That pain. They're just trying to create more pain, hoping that the pain they experience from that will overshadow or drown out the pain that they're experiencing from something else. You follow me? So when he looks down and he sees the scars on her stomach, the scars on her arm that she scarred herself, he stops. And he says to her words that were so profound. He said, indeed, those who have been broken, those who have been, broken by their circumstance, they are in fact the most evolved of people. They are the most evolved of people because through their brokenness, through their hurt and their pain, they are able to achieve levels in life that people who grow up in privilege, right, will never achieve. And even if they do achieve, they don't appreciate it, they don't understand it. Powerful. The parallels between that movie and what we're talking about now are so precise. Very important, man, for us to be able to connect, our religion and, precepts and concepts of our faith to the world that we live in. I'm not advocating that people go and see the movie. That's your choice. But what I'm saying, what I saw from that is exactly the same concept that we have in our religion. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God is with those who are broken. And God favors those who have gone through traumatic situations and circumstances. And that there is a privilege that they have. And I've given a multitude of examples for that. When a person is divorced, when a person is oppressed, when a person is knee-deep in sin, trying to get out, when a person is, sick and suffering from illnesses that they have no control over, you are defeated. You wake up one day, go to the doctor, and the doctor run a blood test and come back and say, well, you know what? Yeah, I know you came in for a simple checkup. We ran a blood test and we found, traces of colon cancer. You are defeat. This is something you have absolutely no control over. No control over the situation. So it's important for us to understand that, people who go through these type of traumatic situations in life, that they are not broken to the point where they are worthless, but your brokenness, your vulnerability, your feeling of being defeated gives you a privilege with God that others don't have. And the scholars, they say, إذا فقد العبد المؤمن بعض صحته سيعوضه الله من الكرب أضعاف ما فقد من صحته. The scholars, they deduct from this hadith that if the servant of Allah, believing servant of Allah, loses some of his health or her health, فقد بعد صحته, you lose some of your health, some elements of your health. So you awidhu Allah, that Allah will replace what you lost of your health with a closeness to Him that far exceeds the elements of your health that you lost. Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah. And I said nothing else. I said nothing else tonight. You can walk away with that. This hadith, we can extract from this that when a believing servant loses some of his or her health, for reasons that they may have contributed to, or reasons that are beyond themselves, that Allah will replace what they have lost from their health, elements of their health, with a closeness to Him that far exceeds what they lost from their health. ولهذا سأل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ابنته فاطمة ما لك يا فاطمة قالت حمى لعنها الله قال لا تلعنيها فوالذي نفسي محمد بيده لا تدع مؤمن وعليه ذنب. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he went to his daughter Fatima. Now in with this. The Prophet ﷺ went to his daughter Fatima and he asked her what was wrong. Malaki ya Fatima, what's wrong with you? And Fatima, she said that I'm suffering from fever. La'nah Allah, may Allah curse this fever that I am experiencing. And the Prophet ﷺ said to his daughter, La tal'aniha, don't curse the fever. Don't curse the sickness that you're suffering from. He said, because I swear by the one in whose hands Muhammad's soul is in, that no believer is afflicted with a sickness except that sickness leaves him or her sinless. Sinless. Every day that you wake up and you have to suffer from this sickness, it is wiping away, washing away your sins. Those who experience trauma, those who have been broken, are by far the most evolved. No doubt. No doubt about it. Spiritually, physically, all around the board. So when we look at, the things that we are tested with in life, whether our health, our wealth, the health of our children, it's very difficult to bear, but at the same token, hopefully information like this will help us to balance some of what we feel and what we experience. We're human beings, man. And I just think as Muslims, we just kind of overlook the human side of our religion. Many of our leaders in the past, as well as in the present, are too busy trying to get the information out there to you to make themselves look like they're super intelligent and worthy of the title of sheikh and imam and student of knowledge, right? And all these different titles that we're struggling to be validated for, right? You have so many people, they ask, oh, are you a sheikh? What does it matter? Did I give you enough information that benefited you? If I did, then alhamdulillah. It doesn't matter what my title is. I don't care about the title. The title doesn't validate me. The title doesn't make me, whether you're a PhD, a sheikh, a student of knowledge, a student of this sheikh or that sheikh. So what? So what? We're looking for validation through these things. Or I'm the top student of sheikh such and such. Or I used to teach here. I used to do that. So what? What matters is how relevant you are and how much you are able to benefit the people that are in front of you. That is what counts. That is what matters. The title that you call yourself, the title that you go by really means absolutely nothing. I remember as a young student of knowledge how important that was to me. It was so uber important to me to be recognized as this student of knowledge, this graduate, this from the prestigious University of Medina. And I studied with this sheikh, and I can give you a list. I can run off a resume, a list of scholars that I studied with and studied from. And people would mention that before they would introduce you. And you would come out on stage with your chest pumped out because of this grand entrance of an introduction that somebody just gave you. All the while, the information that you're giving to the people is not even resonating with them. Because you are so entranced and enthralled with the titles and the resume that has been presented before you that you fail to see that the greatest benefit of it all is being able to transfer what you have in here to what is in the hearts of the people that are in front of you. And if that's not your goal, then you're in the wrong place. If you want to be entertained, if you want to be an entertainer, or you're looking for, flashing lights and cameras, then you might want to be in Hollywood. Because that's where that goes on. Here we're trying to repair lives, repair families, repair hearts, repair minds, repair relationships with God. That's what we're into. That's primarily what the job of an imam or student of knowledge or sheikh, that's primarily what your job is. And unfortunately, we have, created so many different, monsters in our communities through this, this commercialized, version of Islam that we're looking for. And then when that imam fails us, then it's off to raising up another imam. It's off of raising up another sheikh. Let's go find another sheikh because this one failed us. He didn't fail you. You failed yourself. All he was doing was being a human being. That's it. The person was just being human. You raised them to this level of, being an angel, this angelic being, superhuman. You did that. And we have to stop doing that to ourselves, man. The most important thing is to be able to get the information out. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Inshallah, we'll take a couple of minutes for questions and answers, bi'idhnillah. Periscope, I'm going to turn you guys off and turn it back on.